Jake Paul is reportedly fighting Mike Perry on July 20th, which was the original date for the Mike Tyson boxing match on Netflix. Now, according to all parties involved, the Jake Paul vs Mike Tyson fight is still going ahead in November if Tyson is even fit enough to get in the ring. However, it's obvious that Jake wants to stay active and fight other guys before Tyson, and I think Mike Perry is a fun fight. I've seen people complain about Jake Paul fighting Mike Perry for several reasons, so let's get into it. The first complaint: Mike Perry is a bare-knuckle fighter and not a professional boxer. I don't really care, to be honest. The term professional boxer is super broad, and I'd prefer to see Jake fight a really tough former UFC star than a tomato can that would get knocked out in a round. The latter may have a professional boxing record, but Mike Perry is a harder test for Jake. There's no doubt about that. As hard as Mike Perry is though, I think Jake Paul stops him late actually. But still, he poses Jake way more issues, unlike the aforementioned tomato can boxer. I mean, even Tommy Fury is classified as a professional boxer with an undefeated winning record. I mean, boxing is literally his job, and he went life and death with both KSI and Jake Paul. Either we consider the latter to actual boxers, or the term professional boxer doesn't mean a whole lot. Whether we like it or not, these YouTube boxers need to even the playing field to make up for their lack of experience or amateur background. Either their opponents need to be boxers who are way smaller than them, like Amir Khan or Floyd Mayweather, or they're MMA fighters who may have striking experience and be relatively the same size, but they aren't necessarily boxers by trade, like Anderson Silva or Tyron Woodley. Another important aspect of picking the right opponent in the influencer boxing scene at least is name value. These opponents need to be winnable fights for KSI and Jake Paul, and they also need to have a big audience or some sort of global appeal to bring into the fight. When Jake fought journeyman boxers who were unknown, nobody seemed to care, and it was terrible matchmaking regardless because these real pro boxers, quote unquote, didn't give Jake any challenge. I do not envy the position of being a matchmaker for KSI and Jake Paul because you're gonna get criticism either way. Whether the opponent is too old, an MMA fighter, fights in a smaller weight division, or is a nobody, there's always a complaint. The only opponents who everybody was on board with were Tommy Fury and Hasim Rahman Jr. They weren't old, they can actually fight, and they were professional boxers. I'm fine with Mike Perry as an opponent because this is really only a stopgap for Jake before he fights Mike Tyson, and Perry should make the build-up and the fight itself super entertaining. Another reason why people don't like this fight is Jake Paul and KSI should be fighting each other. I understand that everyone wants to see KSI vs Jake Paul and it's the most anticipated YouTube boxing fight of all time, but who expected it to actually happen in July? Jake Paul and KSI's teams are still negotiating, going back and forth and sending contracts out. This will take a lot of time, unfortunately, and they aren't going to rush the biggest fight in influencer boxing just because Jake Paul's calendar is free that weekend. KSI is also fighting in August, so if he had a bout against Jake in July, that would be a super quick turnaround to be ready for the August card. We're talking barely a month, and that would be impossible to pull off. I hope that KSI and Jake Paul does happen, and I hope they are both at 100% when they do eventually fight, but it was never going to happen on this date or even this year, I think. So how is this Mike Perry vs Jake Paul fight gonna play out? Being a bare-knuckle fighter, Mike Perry is going to be very tough and will bring the fight to Jake. He's durable, he's undefeated in bare-knuckle, and although his boxing skills might be lacking compared to Jake's, he knows how to scrap, first and foremost. I imagine he'll try to brawl Jake and make the fight ugly. Jake Paul will get a late stoppage though, I imagine, through just outlanding him for each round. What I'm most interested in regarding this matchup is not even the fight itself, but where it's going to air. I doubt that Netflix are going to be interested in a bare-knuckle fighter versus Jake Paul. There's just not that much global appeal to be worth putting on. Mike Tyson, as I said in a previous video, is the A, B, C fucking D side, and I presume the only real reason that Netflix was interested in a fight between Jake Paul in the first place. Jake Paul can't carry a card on Netflix with their 200 million subscriber base. So with that said, I'm thinking that DAZN will broadcast the Jake Paul vs Mike Perry fight, and then Netflix will do the Mike Tyson fight as planned. Let me know what you think of the fight and if you prefer Mike Perry fighting Jake Paul or Mike Tyson.